I'm a sports fan. I like baseball and I really enjoy most newer sports games that have been released over the last couple console generations. However, when it comes to retro games, most sports games seem to fall flat. The original Super Mario Bros., a game that's 32 years old, most definitely has been done better, but it's still a great game with a list of reasons that make it worth revisiting again and again. Therein is the question we'll be asking. Do RBI Baseball and World Series Baseball have merits that still make these games worth playing, or are they just shelf fodder? This is Retro Impressions and Reviews, a show dedicated to answering if video games from the past are still worth your time today. I want to give both RBI and World Series Baseball on the 32X a fair shake, and feel it can only be done by starting at the beginning of each series and working our way toward the game we're going to review. In part 1, I'll be looking extensively over the RBI series starting at the beginning and ending in 1995. In part 2, we'll be covering every edition of World Series Baseball released on the Genesis and the 32X. We will also do a final showdown to determine what 32X baseball game is superior over a range of categories. I think it's important to mention before moving on that nostalgia isn't a factor when I score a game. And while milestones are always sweet to mention, these don't factor into my final score either. First up is RBI Baseball for the regular Nintendo. Developed by Namco for the Famicom as the first game in the long-running Family Stadium series, this game features all 8 pro Japanese baseball teams along with 2 all-star teams. A few series mainstays make their first appearance here, such as the easy-to-grasp arcade-like gameplay, the way outfielders control, and the 3-part display showing the batter along with first and third base. As part of an agreement Namco had with Tengen at the time, it was translated by Atari and published in North America by Tengen on the NES. Nothing new was added, there are no new teams beyond the original 8 and 2 all-star teams. There was one major change however. It was licensed by the Major League Baseball Players Association, allowing it to use real players' names. However, the game was not licensed by Major League Baseball, meaning no team names or logos are used in the game. In fact, the RBI series would never acquire a Major League Baseball license and thus would never feature actual teams or team logos in any of the games. Because it's the first game to be licensed by the Major League Players Association, it's considered historically important when it comes to sports games. Next up is RBI Baseball 2. This is an entirely new game and not another Japanese reskin. Developed and published by Tengen this time around, they took a bunch of cues from the original game in regard to the presentation and gameplay. Let's talk about the changes though. As this game was built from the ground up with Major League Baseball in mind, it features all 26 teams along with their players from the year the game was published and some special teams. All new graphical assets are used, giving it a much more polished look, and there's actual variety in the music this time around. In what's possibly the most important change though, you can now jump and dive for the ball while on defense. RBI Baseball 3 on the NES is the only game to see a 2-system release. It's essentially RBI Baseball 2 with an updated roster, a new soundtrack, and that's about it. Next is onto the Genesis with RBI Baseball 3. There's no sound or sound effects until entering the game. It seems a bit off and caused me to double check my sound a couple times. This isn't something new for the series, but something I wasn't expecting from a Genesis game. Anyways, it's essentially RBI Baseball 3 on the NES ported to the Genesis with a graphical makeover that was considered fancy for the time. There is now umpire voicing as well. It's actually a poor port as it doesn't control as well as its NES counterpart. The audio is slightly better quality but has issues. Things such as the cutting of music when an announcer speaks, play calls not matching what's happening on screen, and the occasional 2 music tracks playing at the same time get old quick. This game is honestly not that impressive and not worth picking up over the NES version. RBI Baseball 4 received a large overhaul with new presentation, graphics, music, and art style. I consider it a massive improvement. The inclusion of an on-screen base coach, new ball animation showing how high it's been hit, along with snippets showing your teammates and the crowd celebrating, really adds to the immersion. The music and voiceovers are greatly improved, fixing the cutout and overplay issue from before. There are now 24 music tracks, and it's all done fairly well. There are also 2 new game modes, a home run derby and game breakers, which is endgame type scenarios. Each team now has their own stadium, along with 3 series types to choose from, including single game, best of 7, and division play. The gameplay seems to be ironed out along with one major addition, and that's computer-assisted defense. There are some other additions such as Stadium Tour, but it's not worth discussing here. Not much changes with RBI Baseball 93 when it comes to the experience of playing the game, but there are a few new modes. You can now create teams in a mode that's really just a roster edit, and there's defense practice. In 93, baseball experienced an expansion adding 2 teams, the Colorado Rockies and Florida Marlins. Both teams are included in this game, raising the total team count to 28. The last thing worth mentioning is defense can now be set to computer-assisted, auto, or manual, such as used in RBI Baseball 3 and before. I imagine there must have been complaints leading to this option, but don't really know. I also think this game has the finest music of any in the series. It only has 18 tracks instead of the 24 from the previous game, but it is so much better. Last up on the Genesis is RBI Baseball 94. 7 games into the series, and we finally have music during the menu screen. There is now the inclusion of profile pictures for some players that are shown while you're at bat, and occasionally replays are shown in the windows displaying first and third base. The animations are updated with little subtleties here and there that really add to the game. The graphical style is one that ages well and would be readily accepted in a new retro-style baseball game. There's only one new mode called Pickle, better known as the Rundown in recent years, along with the option to play all teams. New game series include 80 and 162 game seasons. The music takes a slight step back from 93, but it's still solid with 27 tracks in total. What do you get when you strip out every bit of charm that gives the game personality? For this series, it's RBI Baseball on the 32X. I can't really tell you about this game without telling you how disappointing it really is. First, the positives. The gameplay is for the most part unchanged. Now, on to everything else. Gone is the pickle mode, player portraits, the amazing animations, the great art style, the great music, and the 3-part batter screen. They removed staples of the game that really set it apart, and the move blows my mind. The art style changed for the worst, and it's ugly. In fact, you need to go all the way back to the NES games to find one that looks worse. It's as if they gave the game a lobotomy, leaving it as just an empty shell of its former self. So here it is, the final RBI game on a Sega console, a much more powerful 32X console, and that means that there are higher expectations. Things that should be improved when stepping up to better hardware, things this game doesn't do. Batters can't move up or down in the batter box, unlike the previous games. The batter animation is in fact worse. Also, the viewpoint has changed and the catcher and umpire are no longer shown. When you move the batter, they only slide back and forth, as if they're on a foosball table. This was fine on less powerful hardware, but hardly acceptable on the 32X with a game that's been fully overhauled. Other simple things are missing that gave the old game soul, such as the animations used when pausing the game. This is something they made improvements to 3 games in a row. Then, the big release for the 32X happens, and nothing. It's like they were taking it back to RBI Baseball 3 on the NES. Honestly, not one of the cool animations that made the previous games feel so alive make a return or receive a replacement. The music needs to be addressed too because it's awful. Like the previous release, there are 27 music tracks, but a large amount of them have the potential to make your ears bleed. I'm not sure what anyone was thinking letting some of these tracks into the final game, as it's a complete dropping of the ball by those composing them and those responsible for allowing them into the final release. The voice samples are not up to snuff as well, being only on par, and in most cases, lower quality than preceding games. Before I close this review out, I want to talk about fielding and the gameplay mechanics. When it comes to how the outfielders are controlled, little has changed since the first game. The main issue is when you try controlling one outfielder, you end up controlling them all. Moving them all in the same direction, you're moving the one. When computer-assisted defense was added in RBI Baseball 4, it was a welcome addition. It didn't solve the issue, but it helped alleviate some of the struggles associated with it. It's crazy, but RBI Baseball 95 for the 32X overhauled everything that made this series special and unique, trashing nearly everything the series had going for it. Everything that made RBI Baseball is gone, all but the worst parts. It makes no sense, but 8 games later, we have a game that has gone out of its way to look like something that doesn't belong in the RBI series, while maintaining nearly identical outfield controls to its NES brothers. The final game we're going to look at is Super RBI Baseball for the Super Nintendo. This is essentially RBI Baseball 95 and was released around the same time as RBI Baseball 95 on the 32X. This game is quite neutered when comparing it to 94, making it feel more like a late alpha build rather than a finished game. There is nothing new to mention, but there are some issues. The controls are arranged in an awkward fashion and don't feel that responsive. There are only 12 music tracks and none of them are that great. I haven't really gone into much detail on the number or quality of in-game sound files before, but to give a comparison, this game has 15 fewer songs and 16 fewer sound and voice effects than RBI Baseball 94. For this game to even become competitive in quality or quantity, you need to go all the way back to 1991 with RBI Baseball 3. Many of the animations I grew accustomed to seeing have been removed, and the implementation of music during gameplay is poorly done. I'm not going to drone on about this game any longer because there's a lot of flaws, and it's time to move on. So we've talked a lot of baseball, now it's time to rank these games and give the 32X version along with the top ranked game a score. Number 9. RBI Baseball for the NES. It's a fun game to pick up and play, but lacks things I want to do in even the simplest of baseball games, such as jumping and diving for the ball while on defense. Number 8. Super RBI Baseball. This game feels unfinished. From bad music to bad control, there is little fun to be had here. It's a huge step backward in nearly every aspect. This game is without a doubt the one you release if you want to kill off the game franchise. Number 7. RBI Baseball 95 for the 32X. Let's not mince words here, this is the other game that put a stake in the heart of RBI Baseball, ending the series. Number 5 and 6. RBI Baseball 2 and 3 for the NES. These games are identical from what I can tell, beyond the player rosters and some music. It really comes down to personal preference here. Number 4, RBI Baseball 3 on the Genesis. Play-by-play announcers, better music, and some upgraded visuals make up for where this game falls short, pushing it just a step above its NES counterpart. Number 3, RBI Baseball 4. With the introduction of new modes, a complete overhaul of the presentation, art style, proper music, and the inclusion of computer-assisted defense, we finally have a solid title. Number 2. RBI Baseball 93. Although only a slight upgrade to number 4, having the best music of any game in the series makes it a much more enjoyable experience. Number 1. RBI Baseball 94. Half seasons, full seasons, digitized player portraits, amazing animations, improved graphics, and great music make this the swan song of the RBI series. It's absolutely oozing with personality, style, and fun gameplay. This is the one you want to pick up if you're looking to play an RBI game for the first time. It's now time for the final scores. First up is RBI Baseball 94 for the Genesis. My final score? A 6 out of 10. This game is without a doubt the pinnacle of the series. Sure, it has issues that remain unresolved from the start of the series, but it's quite fun as a pick up and play title. The music is great, the art style and the graphics are really amazing, and more important to me, they're timeless. And finally, RBI Baseball 95 for the 32X. My final score? 2.5 out of 10. In the end, RBI Baseball for the 32X was a major step both backwards and in the wrong direction, leaving nothing but a bad taste in my mouth. The new digitized look is terrible, but worse was the decision to keep the mediocre framework and add junk on top of it. Doing this only makes for a bigger pile of trash, and that's exactly what this is, a big pile of trash. Thanks for watching the video. Feel free to leave a positive or negative comment letting me know your thoughts. Part 2 covering World Series Baseball is next, so click the subscribe button if you enjoy the video, and I'll see you again. Until next time, this has been Retro Impressions and Reviews.